Karoline Leavitt was no stranger to pressure. For over a decade, she had navigated the most dangerous corners of the legal world, cases involving organized crime, corrupt corporations, and political figures who believed themselves untouchable. Her name carried weight in the legal community, whispered with equal parts respect and apprehension. But today felt different. The morning sun filtered weakly through the tall courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Karoline's heels clicked with precision as she approached Courtroom 4B, where Judge Howard Gates presided. Gates was infamous, a man whose razor-sharp tongue and unapologetically biased rulings had intimidated more than a few attorneys. Rumors swirled about his connections to the state's most powerful developers, though nothing had ever been proven. Karoline knew better than to rely on rumors. She relied on facts. And today, she had plenty. The case was a government ethics trial against Charles Lawson, a wealthy developer accused of funneling millions in taxpayer funds into his private projects. The evidence was airtight. Financial records, emails, and eyewitness testimony, but power had a way of bending the rules. Karoline had spent weeks preparing, anticipating every objection, every maneuver the defense might throw her way. What she hadn't anticipated was the wall she was about to hit. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick, almost oppressive. Reporters lined the back row, pens poised, cameras ready. Lawson sat at the defense table, flanked by his legal team, men in tailored suits who wore smugness like cologne. Judge Gates didn't look up as Karoline approached the plaintiff's table. Instead, he leisurely flipped through a file, his movements deliberate, calculated to show he wasn't in any hurry to acknowledge her. Finally, he spoke. "Ms. Leavitt, I assume you've prepared something of substance today, or should we skip ahead to the part where you waste my time?" A few chuckles rose from the defense table. Karoline's jaw tightened, but she kept her face neutral. "Your Honor, the evidence will speak for itself." He leaned back in his chair, eyes half-lidded in mock boredom. "Taxpayer dollars," he scoffed, "because that's never been the foundation of a frivolous case before." Her pulse remained steady. "I wouldn't call felony corruption frivolous." But before she could continue, he cut her off again. "Ms. Leavitt, spare me the lectures. Get to the point. I don't have all day." The hostility was palpable. It wasn't just the usual judicial impatience, it felt personal. And Karoline began to suspect why. She opened a folder and began presenting Exhibit A, detailed financial records showing Lawson's company receiving triple the approved budget, with no accounting in state records. The evidence was irrefutable. But Gates interrupted again. "Do you always insist on drowning people in paperwork?" he said with a smirk, "or is this your way of compensating for something?" The room shifted, a few gasps, the smirks at the defense table widened. Karoline kept her composure. "If this becomes personal, Your Honor, I'll be happy to request a recess to address any professional concerns you may have." For a flicker of a second, his smirk faltered, but he pressed on. The hours wore on and the interruptions grew more blatant. Gates denied motions without hearing them, ruled evidence inadmissible without reason. Each ruling chipped away at the case, or so he thought. Karoline's moment came when she displayed an internal ledger obtained through subpoena, showing double the amount of funds being transferred, accompanied by an approval signature. His signature. The courtroom froze. "Your Honor," she said evenly, "would you like to explain why your signature appears on an unauthorized financial transaction involving the defendant?" His face hardened. "That document is inadmissible." "It was legally obtained," she countered. "It was mishandled," he insisted. The tension in the room was suffocating. And then Karoline set her final trap. From her briefcase, she pulled a small recorder, pressing play. Gates's own voice filled the courtroom. "Make sure she doesn't get her hands on those ledgers. I don't care how." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, reporters scribbling furiously. Gates's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened. Your Honor, she said calmly, the question isn't how I got the recording, it's who you were speaking to. Before he could answer, she gave a subtle nod. The side door opened, and two uniformed officers stepped in. Judge Howard Gates, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud, and abuse of judicial authority. The sound of handcuffs clicking was deafening. What followed was pandemonium, reporters flooding the aisles, Lawson paling at the defense table, jurors staring wide-eyed. Gates muttered about disgrace, politics, and witch hunts, but the fight had left his voice. Karoline didn't gloat. She simply said, "Not anymore," as he was led away. The trial continued under a new judge. Without Gates shielding him, Lawson's case collapsed in days. Facing overwhelming evidence, he offered to cooperate in exchange for leniency, naming others in the corruption ring. By the end, Karoline had not only won the case, but also sparked a statewide investigation that brought down several high-ranking officials. And though she knew there would always be another fight ahead, she also knew something else. In a system designed to protect the powerful, truth could still win if you were willing to risk everything to bring it to light.